Hey y'all, it's me, Lucy Foxworth, and I am making a bakery today. This is the Christmas bakery. It's for day number 6 of the my 12 Days of Christmas paper crafts event, and I just love the bakery. It's so much fun. I've got little cutouts you can use for the windows, so you can have, you know, stuff in your bakery. And then the back is open. I haven't decorated mine yet, but I'm going to add things like a little Santa mug, maybe some bread, a cake. I'm going to make a cake stand, and I'm going to show you all of this on my live. Today is, what day is today? December 6th, 2024, and on the live for this day, we're going to make the decorations. But this video shows you how to construct the Christmas bakery. First, I'm going to go over Cricut Design Space because that's where I cut everything out, and then we'll go into the details of constructing it. It's basically pretty simple. It's basically a box and decorative elements, and then once the decorative facade is made, this is a separate piece of paper, facade is made, you glue those on, and then you assemble the box, and then you add the kind of 3D elements, the awning and the little balcony, the wrought iron balcony, and glue it to a base. You do need to glue it to a base because the front is heavy, so if it doesn't have a base on it, it'll tend to tip forward. Okay, so let's get started with this fun craft. So for the first step in cutting out the Christmas bakery, I'm going to Cricut Design Space, New Project. That's the green button here in the upper right hand corner. New Project, Upload, Upload Image. Then I go to Browse so I can find it on my computer. I'm working on my laptop because that's the easiest way for me to show you all the details. Browse. I've got the SVG cut files in 2 different forms. This is the way I prefer. Open, and that is the correct image. Now we'll go to the image details file. I call it the Christmas Bakery. I'm Lucy at Paper Glitter Glue. You can add any tags like Christmas Village, Bakery, House Patterns, Patterns by Lucy, whatever. Then we're going to click the green button in the lower right-hand corner. The green button is kind of what tells you next. So when it's green, it's kind of like that's the next step. And now here's our file, and I can already tell that it uploaded at the correct size just because it's big on the screen. Sometimes Cricut makes changes where it uploads a little bit funny. I like to see the entire design, so I'm going to reduce it using this reduce it on the screen using this little toggle button down here. Lately, I've been making a duplicate copy and hiding it. That way, if I accidentally resize it or something when I didn't intend to, I've got it. I've got the exact file without having to reload it again. The first step is ungrouping. That's just the ungroup button in the layers panel. And then I check to make sure it's the right size, and there are 2 ways to do that. This square, the scale square, should say 1 by 1 inch, and you can also see this if you click on the scale square. You can also see on the size button it's 1 by 1. So I know it came in at the correct size, and then I just delete it. I don't need my scale square anymore. And really the most important thing to do on this screen is to identify the score lines and attach them to the piece they belong to. So I group all the score lines with the piece they belong to. Okay, so this is the awning for the bakery. We'll click this little down arrow. We're in the layers panel, and we're choosing these lines. When we click on them, if you go over to this section, the operations menu, you see that the color of the line changes. It's a red square here, and that color block means that I drew those lines in red. So they are indeed score lines. I always draw my score lines in red, or at least I always mean to. Every once in a while I forget. Okay, now we'll go down to the operations menu itself and click on score. And now if you look at the design, let me enlarge it a little bit so you can see. It's a dash line. The next most important thing to do is to select the entire piece. You can either select it like this or go over to the layers panel and select the whole thing, and then you scroll down to the bottom of the layers panel where this little paper clip symbol is, and attach. I'm going to reduce the size again so I can find all my other score lines. So that's the awning. The main piece has score lines, of course. This is the main structure of the bakery. And when I click on it here, it turns green in the layers panel. So I'll open up this little arrow. I'll choose these lines. They should be in red. When I go to the operations menu, the color box besides the operations menu, it is red, and that's your big clue that it's a score line. Score. Choose the entire piece. I did that in the layers panel. That's kind of the easiest place. Choose the entire piece, go down to attach, and now when my Cricut cuts out that piece, it will score in the appropriate place. And the other places with score lines are the two shelves. In my design, when I did my construction, I only used one shelf, but I really wish I'd done two. It sort of depends on how many little things you want to place in the back of the bakery, how many baked goods you want to put in your design. So you can choose one or two shelves. You do the score lines exactly the same way. This is railing. This is the balcony, kind of the little balcony and the wrought iron railing. It does have score lines in it, so you can so it's dimensional when you glue it onto the house. It has a funky set of score lines. Let's click those lines and check to make sure they're red. They are red in the color box. Score, entire piece, attach. And this piece is an optional. Let me enlarge so you can see it. This is an optional piece, but because I cut this out of cardstock, I want to make sure that it is sturdy. So the wrought iron, I didn't want it to be too wiggly and too thin and fragile. So I added a backup piece, kind of like an extra structural piece. And it has a couple of score lines as well. So select those, score, select the entire piece, attach. Let me explain what these pieces are. This is the base. You really need a base for this because all of the decorative elements on the front of the bakery itself make it want to tip forward. So you need some kind of base to anchor it better. And I cut mine out of cardboard, a little bit of cardboard, but you could use 3 or 4 layers of cardstock. You want it just to be heavy enough to keep your bakery upright. So I suggest that you use cardboard, but you can use cereal box cardboard, you can use poster board. You just need a little cardboard, and I glued 3 layers together. I think you can cut 3 of these with 1 sheet of cardboard, 8.5 by 11 cardboard. All right, other options are the wreaths if you like them. I actually thought they were a little busy with all the stuff I had going on the bakery, so I didn't use them. But maybe you'll use different colors where the wreaths would work well, but I left them off. This is decorative trim at the top, and it's actually 2 pieces. One is a background color if you want, this is a background color if you want the squares to be a different color from the back of the building. So that's what that is. You don't have to do that necessarily. The same things with the columns. I made an extra background color because I really like giving the columns a little bit of dimension. And the same thing with the panels at the base of the main window. I really think this is a fun detail. I also did the same thing with the windows. There is a yellow window piece that goes behind, but I actually didn't use them. I just used some of the graphics and I cut them out by hand for behind the windows because some of the graphics have really fun gingerbread houses stuff that you can put behind the windows. And if you want if you want to show something in your windows as opposed to using these window frames, then I made these more open windows. So that's another option for you. My awning, I did not have good striped paper, so I had to paint my stripes, but I hope you can find some nice striped paper to make really colorful awning. Next, let's go to making it. I'm not going to save at this point. It separates by colors, and it tends to do colors as it will do the black first. But if you want to change colors, let's go back. I'm just going to cancel so we go. If you want to change your colors, I thought black was a little harsh for the colors I use, the pastel colors I use. So what you can do is change your colors. So let's go to this. Let's see if this works. So we're clicking on just the railing itself, not the score line, railing. And let's change colors. Let's see what happens. Let's make it a lighter color, just blue for contrast. And so you can change your colors using the color box. You don't want a purple base, you want a gray base. You can just change your colors that way. And then it will sort by color for you. My machine is a maker, but you can make this design on everything except the Cricut Joy. It's too tall for the Cricut Joy. So use my maker, and I'm just going to show you my settings real quick. For my version, I actually used heavy watercolor paper that I painted. So that's what I used. And then, but you could use heavy cardstock, you could use light chipboard. It would work in cardboard too. I don't recommend that you use lighter cardstock. I really think you need heavier cardstock. It's going to be structured. You're going to have shelves in the back. So I think it makes sense to use heavy cardstock, 100-pound or above, or heavy watercolor paper, or even cardboard. And the cardboard that I often use, I didn't use it on this one, is 22-point cardboard, and it cuts beautifully with my Cricut. All right, the next step is construction. Before we get to construction, I forgot to show you the other way I've set up the SVG files for you. I'll show you the stacked file. This is the stacked file. You can put in any image details you like, upload. And for the stacked file, everything is set up so that it fits on a 12 by 12 cardstock mat. You reduce the size. I did that because sometimes Cricut Design Space updates have made this change where they want everything to fit on a 12 by 12 mat. So even though each individual piece fits on the mat, I like my files. I like to be able to see the file and see how everything all comes together. But again, sometimes there are changes where Cricut does what I think are weird updates, and I just wanted you to be able to use the file if they do one of those updates. You've still got the 1 by 1 inch scale square, and you see that it says 1 by 1 inch here, and in the size block it says that too. So once we know that, we can delete the 1 by 1 inch square because you don't want to cut it out. And then you do your pieces exactly like before. It's just that they're all stacked. But I wanted to show you the stacked option is in case there's a Design Space update that restricts the size so that all the pieces have to be able to fit on a 12 by 12 mat. Even though, you know, the total number of pieces won't fit on one mat. That's what the stacked version is. I actually prefer the other version, but I wanted you to have that option in case that one kind of becomes obsolete. Okay, that's it. Now we really go to construction. Right, let's start making the bakery. These are the structural pieces. This is the shelf that goes in the back of the bakery, and this is the main body of the bakery. And these 4 pieces are going to be the base. I'm going to glue them together and then paint them. The trick about the base is that this is pretty flexible cardboard, and when it gets wet, like with glue, it'll kind of warp and it'll bend a little bit. So I'm going to have to dry it under a weight, like put it on a book, under a book. And if you don't want glue on your book, just kind of wrap this with either wax paper or parchment paper. So those are the structural pieces. For this project, I'm actually using watercolor paper. This is 140-pound or 300-gram paper, and it's nice and thick. Let me see if I can kind of show you. See, it's got a good body to it. And I used this paper because it was easy to paint. But of course, you are welcome to use cardstock. And then for glue, for gluing my decorative pieces on, I'm going to use my Barely Art glue. And for the structural pieces to glue this together, I'm going to use my quick dry tacky glue. And let me get my decorative pieces out and show them to you. And that's what we'll start with first. I'll show you kind of some options. I almost always give you options partly because I have trouble deciding what to do. And I added some wreaths. if you want to use them. This one's bigger, so you can use it on the door if you want. And then I made some smaller wreaths to go on the windows. I don't think I'm going to use them. Sometimes I change my mind. Anyway, you have them as an option in your files. And this is the awning that goes over the door. And this I'm really tickled about. This is the railing for the wrought iron railing. And I debated about the color. I almost did one in black, but I thought with these kind of pastel colors that this color worked well. This is the trim at the top. And here you can add the name. Whatever you choose to name your patisserie, you can handwrite it, or I made up some graphic pages for you. These are options for the front display window. Some have greenery, some don't. Some have gingerbread at the top. This one was from Canva, kind of a pre-made one, but it looks more like a kind of a French bakery. These are some choices you have for the names of your bakery. Lucy's Bakery, Christmas, Noel, Kringle's Bakery, just so Joyful Baking Company. You can kind of choose. And then if you want plain windows, instead of the decorative windows, you can use these. You can just kind of cut this out. I would cut it by hand because I think it's so much easier to cut by hand than to line this up exactly right on your Cricut, do print and cut, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, that's why I cut it by hand. But these are the kind of the background pieces you can use if you like. But I really like the front display window pieces. And I've already got one in place. At first, I was just going to leave the door blank. But then I kind of put one behind it. I'm like, oh, that's cute. And so that's why I'm not sure about the wreath, because it covers up all my little creatures, all my little gingerbread stuff. So anyway, you're just going to have to decide. So this is a door, and I glued a contrasting piece of cardstock or watercolor paper behind the bottom of the door to look like wood paneling. But for the windows, I glue the window pieces behind this front, this kind of false front, this facade. These are what I've cut out. So let's pick one to go back here. I really like that one. I think that's my favorite. And it's nice. You don't have to be as precise if you glue it to the back of the facade as opposed to cutting it out and gluing it to the window itself, the window frame itself. So let's apply some glue around the edge. And I'm decorating most of the facade before I put the structure of the house together. And I'm doing that because it'll be easier to adhere this while the structure is flat. Now, if you glue all this stuff on, then it's not easier. But we're going to do the windows and the window frames before we glue it to the front of the main body. Okay, now we can apply glue around this edge. And again, there's a contrasting piece of cardstock or watercolor paper, painted paper, to make this kind of paneling show up. I like little details like that. You actually don't have to. You can just use the color of the building behind it. But I really like the contrasting color. Oops, and it goes to the bottom. The door and the window frame are designed to line up with the bottom. Let's put the door on. Don't the little gingerbread guys look good? And then the next thing is I like these columns. A lot of these kind of French buildings, bakeries have these columns. So I made 3 columns, and the bottom is slightly thicker. The base of these little columns is slightly heavier at the bottom, but it really doesn't matter. And again, a contrasting piece of cardstock or painted paper. Match it up to the bottom so that when you glue it down, or rather when you stand up your building, it will stand up straight. All right, next choice. Originally, I just made these windows, and I was just going to put yellow behind them, but then I decided maybe they should be bakery windows too. So I did another window without the window pane. So if you want to do that, you can. And I'm not sure if it's too busy, especially with this. So I don't know. You just kind of decide. Maybe you have something else. Maybe you have a little picture of one of your kids, like you could shrink it down and glue it behind. but I think I'm just going to use plain yellow and the regular windows. Scissors, and I'm just going to cut this. I just think it's so easy to cut by hand. And I put a 1-inch scale square on this file, but when my printer printed it, it actually shrunk it down a little bit. So the 1-inch scale square, it's 1 inch in my original design, but when it's printed on the current printer I have, it's about it's shrunk at like 2%. Okay, let's see how this goes. Cut it a little bit more. I thought it was easier to glue one piece as opposed to 3 different window pieces. Right. Let's see how this looks with the windows and the wrought iron railing. See, I think, and then you got this. I really think it's enough detail just to leave them yellow, just plain. And that, you know, and you've got this, and you've got kind of the trim at the top. I'm just going with the light yellow background. I'm going to apply glue around my windows. Put the glue down. Make sure the border doesn't show. Yeah, so I just like to give you options so that, because everybody's creative, I just like you to have, you know, some choices, some decorative choices that are easy to do. Try to line them up to look. I'm gonna flip it over. All right, that looks good. Now let's do the upper trim. And like I said, you could just use a strip of contrasting paper here. I did not include that in the file. Okay, line it up with the top here. It does extend slightly past the edge. And let's put a patisserie at the top. Then match up the edges. And we have most of our front facade done. What we have to do is glue this to the front of our structure, and then once the whole structure's done, we will add the awning and the railing. All right, next, let's do the 2 side pieces while we're doing decorative stuff. Now for this one, I do think on the bottom level that it makes sense to include, to have some a cake or something showing. So let's pick something different. Let's pick this. I'm just going to trim it a little bit. And let's see what it looks like with the frame, with the plain frame. So we'll do that on the bottom, but we'll do the plain, like the more private window on the top. We'll use it like a display window on the bottom. Now we have all the pieces ready to go on the body of the bakery. And this is the main body. So to glue this big piece on, I'm going to use my stronger glue. Actually, first I think I'm going to glue the side pieces on, because this has a little bit of an overhang and I'd like these in first. They are ever so slightly narrower than the side piece, just to give you a little flexibility for the bend, the score line. I use my stronger glue, and this glue just is thicker and has slightly more sticky. This is quick dry tacky glue. They also make a turbo glue, which I think is probably very similar, and a fast grab. Fast grab is by far the thickest, but it makes it it's actually hard to squeeze out of the bottle. So I don't use that one anymore. Like, I don't know if you could tell, this is pretty thick stuff. And I do like a lot of glue, partly because you can smear it around to make it adhere better. Let's glue this piece together. There's the side of our building. I like that. And if you want it more decorated, you know, you could stencil stone on it, but I really kind of wanted great detail, but I didn't want it to take forever. I didn't mean to. We don't need glue up there. I'm just going to kind of wipe it off. I should have just applied the glue to the body of the bakery. Okay, the most important thing is lining it up at the bottom so that you don't interfere with the score line, and we're not. Okay, so I want it to dry flat. I'm actually going to put it under one of my cutting mats so that one of those what do they call them, self-healing mats, so that it'll dry flat for a minute. And then I'm going to work on the base and talk to you a little bit about these two pieces. So first I'm going to glue these 4 pieces together. And I don't know if you can tell because it's kind of a gentle curve, but a lot of times, especially now that I have a Cricut to cut things for me, I round the corners on bases, because if they tip over or if somebody bumps into them or drops them, they're less likely to bend if they've got a rounded curve. So you might, whenever you're making something that requires a base, you want a little stand for something for one of your houses, it helps to round the curve just a little bit. Then I just kind of smear it around so that the glue is kind of distributed. Rub it around all the edges so the layers will adhere. And I'm going to put that under my cutting mat with a weight on it, just like I did the body of the bakery. So it will adhere, and then I can paint it. So now let's go over making these 2 pieces, because really they add so much personality to our project. I painted this because I just couldn't find good striped paper in my kind of stash of paper. So I painted both of these. And there are 2 score lines on the awning. And one thing that I think it helps to do is to fold it using something to hold it down. For example, let me explain a little bit about folding along narrow score lines. So a lot of times I will put a straight edge along the score line, and then I'll fold one way, and then I'll fold the other. And it just helps hold a narrow edge down. Same thing here. Kind of anchor the narrow edge, and fold towards me, and then away. So that's how you fold the awning. And I like this to be down so that we're going to kind of install it at an angle so that this hangs down. All right, now for the wrought iron. The wrought iron is a little more challenging. I'm all about sturdy. So I actually glued 2 pieces together to make the iron railing a little stronger. So this is the background piece for the railing. And it does have score lines as well. These are actually easy, but if you want to use because you don't want it to bend in the wrong place, so kind of put your, let me see, I may need to put a darker thing down so you can see better. So hold it so you can get that tiny little score line done. And let's do the same thing on the other side. You want to fold it right to the end of the railing. That piece is not really hard. And this will reinforce your railing, because if you just glue it like this, sometimes it gets all wavy. So I just don't like that. This is a little bit wavy, but not too bad. So, okay, so this is the main piece, and if you only want to do one piece, that's fine. So there are 2 score lines here. Let me see if I can angle it in the light so you can see. You can kind of get a hint. 1, 2. And that is because you need a little surface area to glue it to the house itself or to your structure. So you've got these 2 little flaps, and they're little because you don't want them to stick out too much. So let's use our straight edge to help us find that score line. Fold towards me, and then again it's little, so we'll fold away, find the score line towards me. That one was easier. And then it folds here as well, right at the edge of the railing, right to here. And then you've got these two lines. So let's use the straight edge again. I forgot to say this earlier. If you are going to paint either using cardboard or cardstock or watercolor paper, whatever, you need to fold along all the score lines before you do anything. They help you with placement. Okay, so this is the structure of our little porch. And if you want the reinforcement piece, just line it up behind and glue it in place. So that's how you make the porch, the little railing. Next, making the shelf. This is my painted shelf piece. So this is one piece of watercolor paper folded in half. This is the front fold, and then these are flaps. You flip up these flaps. So you just kind of fold it in half, add a good amount of glue, and just like I did the other pieces, I left it under something so it would dry flat. Because this is a shelf and we're going to put really cute little things on it, so we want it to be sturdy. And like I always emphasize, I'd use a strong cardstock, 100-pound or better, and the watercolor paper is 140-pound. We're going to put some hot chocolate mugs, so that's why I want it to be really sturdy, so it'll hold my little Santas and whatever else I come up with for the back of the bakery. Okay, I think this is pretty well adhered, so let's. I always do something goofy. Remember I put glue on the back of this? So let's kind of tease this away, because this is the top of our bakery, the roof of the bakery, and it is supposed to lay flat. I'm using my craft knife to kind of loosen where I put the glue wrong. So what I'll do is I'll kind of repaint my mistake. My very, very common mistake. In other words, I do stuff like this all the time. All right, these are my glue tabs, and let's apply some glue to them. Okay, I needed to get some little clamps. Somebody suggested clothespins. I think that would be a good idea. So you want to be sure this is flat. That's our main structure. Okay, and you can kind of tell it wants to tip over forward. That's another reason you need to glue it to a base, so it won't be so tippy. All right, the next thing we need to do is to get the shelf in, and you can do more than one shelf. I'm not sure. I think I'm only going to do one shelf in the back of the bakery, kind of the display shelf, because I wanted to put some taller things there. So I've got some plates from little doll houses, and I may make a cake out of polymer clay. I don't know exactly right now as I'm making this, but I will certainly show you when I am done. All right, so let's apply glue to these tabs. And if you smear it, it does adhere a little better, a little faster. And if you wait a minute, it adheres faster as well, but I don't usually do that. All right, so the next thing is we want it to be straight. That looks pretty good to me. Now we let that dry, and once that's dry, then we can adhere our wrought iron railing and the awning, which I think, really just kind of makes it. I can't wait. So I'll do that in just a minute. Okay, it's time for the railing. So I'm going to apply the thicker glue, my tacky glue. I think in this case it will be good if we wait just a second for it to adhere. We can go ahead and apply the glue to the back of the awning and give it just a minute to get tacky too. And you want to make sure it's kind of folded so that it will angle. Put our railing on our bakery. Let's see, does that look centered? Actually looks pretty good to me. If you want to press down, you can use a tool of some kind to apply a little bit of pressure. Okay, there's my railing. And now, time for the awning. The real key is just trying to do it straight, so I'm sort of lining it up with the columns. Not exactly with the columns, I want it a little above the columns. I'm going to let it sit for a second, and then I'll bend it more. It's best if you work really, pretty hard to bend it before. I thought I had done it enough, but you see how this has a better angle? That would have been better. Okay, let's see if it's even. I'm going to do painter's tape because I want to make sure it looks even from the top. So I'm going to just kind of lightly put the painter's tape there so I can fold it better and make sure it looks even this way. And that looks good. Then once it's well adhered, then I'll fold it even more. But right now, if I do that folding, it'll pop off. So I'm just going to leave it alone for a minute. And when it's dry, make that much more acute angle so that the awning hangs down. And other than gluing it to the base, we're done with our little patisserie, our little bakery, except for decorating in the back. And I'm going to show you that on the live at 2 p.m. on my live. Each day during this event, I'm going to have a live video. So I'm going to show you making hot cocoa mugs and, whatever other decorative things I'm using. I'll show you when I'm finished.